Sending books back to the library unread is really challenging for me.
It is time for me to take another large stack of books back to the library, so before I drop them off, I thought I would sit down in my secondary nook and chat with you about which ones I read, which ones I'm sending back unread, but hoping to pick up again someday soon. It just seemed like a really good time for another library unhaul. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Valerie Geary. I am so glad that you are joining me today to talk more about books we love, books we're reading, books we checked out from the library and didn't get a chance to read. In 2025, I'm focusing on reading through my own TBR, my physical TBR, my digital TBR. I am trying to focus on reading my own books. But before the year started, I had a bunch of books checked out from the library, and so they have been tempting me. But I really want to kick off my 2025 TBR Takedown Challenge on the right foot and also make a historical record of the books that I checked out so that when I am going back into my library phase, when I've read down my own TBR and I'm ready to check books out from the library again, I can reference this video and remember which ones I checked out and wanted to read and then go and get those books again. I don't want to spend all of January reading through library books when my intention is to read down my own bookshelves. So to that end, I have a stack of library books here. Some of them I have read, some of them I have not yet read, but I need to return them to the library so they are not tempting me. One of my in-person book clubs was reading The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. So I checked this one out and I did read it. This is a Norse myth retelling featuring a witch, Angerboda, who has been burned 3 times, her heart taken out of her chest, and she finds herself living in a very deserted Ironwood. Then the Norse god Loki finds her there and gives her back her heart, and this is their love story. This is their tragedy. This is the retelling of this woman who gave birth to monsters. I really enjoyed this book. I really think that if you liked the book Circe by Madeline Miller, that you would also really connect with The Witch's Heart. It has some of those same feminist retelling vibes, except it's dealing with Norse mythology instead of Greek or Roman mythology. There were a lot of really sad things that happened in this book, but the main character, Angerboda, is such a powerful, strong character, and the conversations she has with Loki, the relationships she has with other people who show up in her woods, with her children, it makes for a really interesting narrative, a really interesting mythological retelling. So I'm very glad to have read this book, and I think I would definitely check out more Norse mythology retellings in the future. I picked up First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston from the Lucky Day shelf. The Lucky Day shelf is a shelf where you don't have the book on hold, it just is there and it's your lucky day because you found it and now you get to read it. I did finish reading this one. This is the last book that I read in 2024 and I had a great time reading it. Was it a perfect book? No. Did it change my life? Oh, absolutely not. But I did find it really entertaining. And in terms of a thriller, it was kind of a little bit different than what we normally find in thrillers, which, at least for me, the ones that I'm reading can be a little bit more domestic, like marital issues, marital problems, domestic violence, or, horrible, terrible, really dark things happening to people. Not always pleasant to read about, but this thriller was just fun. We have a little bit of a cat and mouse game going here. Our main character is a con woman who is in the middle of a job when the book opens, and she is maybe falling in love with her Mark. And then as the story begins to unfold, a lot of things start going wrong, and then we start seeing behind the curtain and all these kind of little twists, and things are definitely not what they seem. We're not really sure who to trust, who's telling the truth, who is a good guy, who is a bad guy. And it was just a really good cat and mouse thriller, a really good way to end 2024. And I'm really happy that I found it on my Lucky Day shelf. It did feel like my lucky day that I got to read this. The rest of the stack, there are 5 books here, are books that I did not get around to reading in 2024. They are books that I'm going to be taking back to the library unread, and they will have to be revisited at a future date. After I am done reading all 290 of all the books that I own, I swear I'm gonna do it. This is the year. This is the year I read my entire backlist of shelves, books that I've collected over the years. Or at least some of them. I did grab another book off the Lucky Day shelf, and I'm actually kind of sad that I didn't get around to reading this. This is The Shred Sisters by Betsy Lerner. This is a contemporary literary novel. This is about 2 sisters who are kind of the exact opposites of each other, and the back and forth, the tug of war, the pull and push of sisterhood, of mental health issues. I do think that this is Betsy Lerner's first novel. She is more well known as an editor, as an agent, as a nonfiction writer, but I do think this one has potential to be like a really powerful literary contemporary novel. So I definitely want to revisit this at some point in the future. I just think it will have to be either later this year or maybe sometime next year, but I want to remind my future self to read The Shred Sisters by Betsy Lerner. Then I picked up a graphic memoir, a graphic novel, or autofiction, I think is what they're calling it. I do not remember where I first saw this book, Babe in the Woods, The Art of Getting Lost by Julia Heffernan. But I was struck by the cover and kind of by the story, which tells about a woman who gets lost in the woods with her baby while she's on a hike, and she spends a night there, and it kind of shifts her perspective on her life. And she finds herself reflecting on her past and how she's gotten to where she is. It just seemed like a really intriguing story. I read a chapter of it. The art is very dramatic, very intense, very artistic. A lot of the times with graphic novels, you'll see some more simplistic art, but this one just fully leans into the art side of it. And so I think that this is a book that I would want to spend more time with. I don't just want to like flip through it, rush to get it read. I really want to experience the art of this book, because that's why this creator made this book, is not just for the story, but also for the art of it, for the visualness of it. There is just some really dramatic color in here, some very exquisite details, and it just seems like a book that I would want to spend time with. You look at this. Gorgeous. So because I don't want to rush through it, I am going to send it back to the library at this point. It doesn't quite feel like a book that is meant for me right now in this moment, but it is a book that I will definitely be looking for in the future. This is probably the most painful book that I am sending back. Where They Last Saw Her by Marcy R. Rendon. This one I had on hold for several weeks, months even, and it just came in and I am sending it back. That is painful, but the good news about the library is that most of the time the book will be there again whenever I want it in the future. This was on my most anticipated mystery and thrillers of 2025, or like the last half of 2025. I don't know. I'll put the video in the comments below if you wanted to watch that. But I was really excited about Marcy R. Rendon's newest release. This is about a young woman who has lived on a Minnesota reservation for most of her life and has spent most of her life watching women go missing. She's kind of tired of all the women in her community going missing, and so she begins to investigate, try to find out what happened to them. And I have a feeling that's not going to go very well for her. She is a runner training for the Boston Marathon, and of course I have a feeling her life is going to get completely upended by her investigating the missing women in her community. I've been interested in this book because I did read another book by Marcy R. Rendon, the first book in the Cash Black Bear series, and that was only okay for me. But even though I wasn't fully invested in that book, I was definitely looking forward to reading something else from Marcy R. Rendon, and this is her latest book. It just came out last year, 2024. I am having really mixed feelings about sending it back to the library right now, but again, I'm trying to read down my own books. I am trying to get through my physical TBR to try and read some of the books that I've had on my shelf for forever. And this one, it can wait. It can wait at the library. It will come back to me. I know it will. I believe in book serendipity, so I know this book will come back into my life at some point. It is just not good timing for me right now. The other two books are also by Indigenous authors, and I had checked these out, I think in October or November. I was planning to do a reading vlog related to Indigenous authors, but then I needed to take a break from booktube and from reading. So I did not get around to reading these two books, but I do really want to read them in the future. They do sound really good, really intriguing. I have flipped through them and read like a sentence here or there, and I really want to revisit them. I do think that they will be fairly easy to get again from the library. I don't think there's going to be like a huge hold wait list because they are backlist books. They're older books. The first one is Cold by Drew Hayden Taylor, and I'm obsessed with this cover. I love the colors of it. This, I think, is a little bit of a mixture of thriller and horror and mystery. I believe it involves several characters who we see separately, but then they become entangled in a gruesome murder investigation. And as the book continues, it becomes more and more clear that they are not just hunting something, something is hunting them. I am definitely going to be revisiting this book at some point. Maybe this year.
I like the idea of reading it in the winter because it says cold. I don't know if the book is cold. It looks cold. You know, the back of the book also says that it's kind of funny, so maybe there's some humor in here too. I don't know, it just sounds so good. Sending it back to the library is not the end of the world. This book can and will find its way back into my life. And finally, I am sending back Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. Similar to the other two Indigenous author books, this one is about people who are investigating missing people and find themselves being haunted by something. Hunted and haunted. This book specifically involves a young woman who is diving into the investigation of several missing women from her tribe, from her community. What intrigues me about the description of this book is that there does appear to be some Indigenous mythology wrapped up in here. Again, I think this is a mashup of genres between mystery and horror. I think what excited me about this book was the idea that there was some kind of legend that was coming to life, something a little bit supernatural, something beyond the reality of this plane. So I definitely want to revisit this book at some point in the future. Maybe 2025 is the year I read this one, but maybe we push it off until 2026. So I am leaving a note to my future self. Check out Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina again. So those are all the books that are going back to the library this week. And I think I have one that I need to pick up for my in-person January book club. But beyond that, no more checking out library books for a while. Like I said in my first episode where I announced the TBR Takedown Challenge, I am limiting myself to one library book a month. So for January, it's gonna be my book club book that I have checked out. And then I have 3, I think, on hold. Those are books that have not yet published, and so I'm kind of hoping they will trickle in rather than all come in at the same time. I think one releases in January, one releases in February, one releases in March, so hoping that the timing will work out. But yes, one book from the library a month as I work on reading down my own physical and digital TBR. So yes, I am a little bit sad that I won't be going to the library as much, that I won't be checking out these giant stacks of books for a while, but I will make my grand library return. You can bet on it. I would love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments, what is the last library book that you checked out or the last library book that you returned? I'm gonna go drop these off at the library now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.